What's up, everyone? Imagine waking up one day and you're not in your bed, but in ancient Macedon, right beside young Alexander the Great. No smartphones, no Wi-Fi, just swords, ambition, and a dream to conquer the world. That's exactly what happens to you, a modern human suddenly stuck in the body of a Macedonian, growing up as Alexander's closest friend. From his wild childhood to his rise as king, from his greatest victories to his final breath, you're there. For all of it, can you survive in the heart of one of history's most unstoppable campaigns? Or better yet, can you change it? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and smash that bell icon, because this is one historical journey you do not want to miss. You wake to the sound of bronze striking stone. Dawn hasn't broken yet. The palace is still wrapped in shadow, but the training yard echoes with sharp, deliberate sounds. It's the clink of a spearhead being honed, of armor plates kissed awake. By a smith's hand, the smell of olive oil, horses, and old blood hangs in the cool morning air. Somewhere, a rooster cries once, defiant, as if trying to summon the sun before it's ready. You sit up from your straw mat. Your tunic clings with sleep sweat. Through a crack in the shutters, you see a figure already moving young, barefoot, and shirtless, cutting shapes into the air with a wooden sword. His back is straight, his eyes forward. Every movement is purposeful, precise. As though the boy has already fought 100 battles in his mind. He hasn't, but he will. That boy is Alexander, son of Philip II of Macedon. And this is the palace at Pella, where kings are carved from discipline and fire. You are one of many. Pages in service to the royal house. Not a noble, but not a slave either. Just close enough to power to smell it. Just close enough to danger to feel it shiver down your spine. Alexander glances at you, but doesn't speak. He doesn't have to. The silence is familiar and intimacy, built not on words, but shared hours before the city wakes. You rise and follow him. The training yard is still damp with dew. The torches are out, but the sky above the eastern hills begins to bleed pale pink. An instructor nods to you, both his eyes sunken from decades of war. He doesn't offer praise or greeting, only orders, forms now. You and Alexander move in unison. Thrust, sidestep, pivot. The rhythm is brutal. Your arms ache before the second repetition. But Alexander? He barely blinks, even at 13. There is something unsettling about him. Not cruelty, not arrogance, something deeper, something restless. As if he was born expecting the world to be larger than it is, and is still furious it hasn't caught up yet. Later, as the palace stirs and servants begin sweeping corridors and drawing bathwater, you walk with him through the portico. He isn't sweaty. He never seems to be. He gestures toward the hills beyond Pella's walls. There's a mountain. Out there, he says. Mount Olympus. They say the gods live at the top. You nod. He looks at you, almost angry. But I don't want to meet the gods. I want to become one. He says it with no irony, no smile, not even ambition, just certainty. By midday, the hall of the palace fills with voices. Diplomats, tutors, courtiers. The smell of roasted lamb and honeyed wine coils through the corridors. You are summoned, along with the other pages, to attend the prince as his education resumes. This is not like any education in Athens or Thebes. The man waiting in the courtyard is slender, sun-darkened, with thoughtful eyes and a voice like still water. Aristotle, he does not bow. He does not flatter. He merely says, "Shall we begin?" And so it begins. You sit cross-legged beneath a fig tree as Aristotle speaks of logic, biology, and metaphysics. He sketches the nature of the soul in the dirt with a stick. He speaks of ethos, pathos, and logos, of the purpose of life, the nature. Of virtue, other boys fidget. Alexander never looks away, and neither do you, because this isn't just education, it's transformation. He who conquers his mind, Aristotle says one day, is greater than he who conquers cities. Alexander frowns. But what if I conquer both? At night, you sit beside him in the gardens. Torches crackle, a breeze stirs the cypress trees. He speaks little, but sometimes, just sometimes, he lets the armor drop. My father, he says, built a kingdom from nothing. He took tribes and made them into a machine. You nod. You've seen Philip the man as thunder in human form. His eye burns with calculation. His voice could command armies or crush the will of kings. Alexander continues, but he will leave me nothing to conquer, nothing but shadows. You look at him, this boy with the eyes of a god and the wounds of a child, and realize he's not afraid of failure. He's afraid of insignificance. And that is more dangerous than any sword. One morning, a wild black stallion is brought to the palace. The beast thrashes, frothing, unbroken. Trainers are thrown. Hooves strike walls. The king, furious, orders the horse taken away and killed. Alexander steps forward. I can ride him. Laughter, derision. Philip's anger flares. But the boy walks to the horse, not with fear, but with curiosity. He watches, observes, and then he turns the animal to face the sun. The horse calms, because it had feared its own shadow. Alexander mounts, no saddle, no reins, and rides. Philip watches. Stunned, he says, Macedonia is too small. For you, my son, you must seek a kingdom worthy of your ambition. You stand beside the crowd, breathless, and for the first time, you feel it, the beginning of something world-shaking that night. Alexander names the horse Bucephalus Oxhead IV. Its stubbornness, its strength. You ask him, "Were you afraid?" He doesn't answer, but in the moonlight, you see his hands trembling, not from fear, but from excitement. He's tasted destiny, and it will never let him go. You wake beneath the vaulted ceiling of the palace's southern wing, light flickering through linen drapes as the morning sun spills over carved stone lions and painted friezes. A scent of ink, oil, and crushed lavender lingers in the air. You're not in the training yard today, not among spears and sand. You are in the library, and the man before you is not a warrior. He is something far more dangerous. Aristotle of Stagira stands before a semicircle of royal boys, Alexander chief among them, his robes stained with travel and thought. He has the bearing of a man used to walking alone, and the gaze of one who has stared directly at the bones of the world. Asterisk, no crown, no armor, no threats, and yet the room bends to him, not from fear, but from gravity. He doesn't introduce himself. He doesn't lecture. Instead, he walks to the table, selects a pomegranate, and holds it up. What is this? He asks. A fruit, says one boy. A gift from the gods, says another. Alexander says nothing. You wait. Aristotle smiles. It is a vessel of potential. Each seed inside could grow a tree. That tree could feed a village. That village could raise a prince. And that prince, he looks at Alexander, could change the world. He breaks the fruit in half. Red seeds spill like rubies. Never mistake small things for simple things, he says, and with that, your education begins. The lessons are like nothing you've ever known. There are no recitations, no rote memorization, only questions. What makes a thing true? What separates a man from a beast? Is the soul born knowing, or does it learn through pain? Aristotle speaks of causes efficient, material, final. He maps the stars above, diagrams the anatomy of birds, and teaches you to name what others only see. He says, to understand the world is to master it, but to understand yourself is to become its equal. Alexander listens as if he's been waiting for these words since birth. You begin to see changes in him. He wakes earlier, trains harder, reads longer. But not for show, not for praise, for clarity. He wants to know how everything works, bodies, empires, gods. He wants to hold the gears of the universe in his hands and turn them one afternoon. Beneath the branches of a fig tree, Aristotle sets down a scroll and looks directly at Alexander. What is virtue? Alexander straightens. The strength to do what is right. Even when the right thing destroys you? Alexander doesn't blink. Especially then. Aristotle's mouth tightens. Not quite a smile. Not quite concern. Later that evening, you catch the philosopher alone, gazing into the hearth's dying light. He murmurs, "The most dangerous kind of student is one who listens." Aristotle brings more than ideas. He brings book scrolls from Egypt, Persia, Ionia. He teaches Alexander not just Greek philosophy, but Eastern thought, Babylonian astronomy, Indian ethics. He shows the prince a map of the known world. Alexander traces the lines with his finger. And what lies beyond here? He asks, pointing east, past India, past the edge of ink. Aristotle shrugs. Some say there is nothing. Some say dragons. Some say gods. Alexander replies, "Then I will find which." You watch him in that moment, no older than 14, and realize something chilling. He does not see borders. He sees doors. One day, Aristotle introduces a scroll from the East, bearing the words of Zoroaster. Good thoughts, good words, good deeds. Alexander frowns. That sounds too simple. Perhaps, Aristotle says, or perhaps it is us who are too complicated. That night, Alexander takes no food. He kneels beside a flickering lamp, scrolls spread around him, lips moving without sound. You see him whispering something. Again and again later, he tells you, Aristotle says the world is made of form and matter, but I think it is made of will. You ask him what he means. He replies, My father built an empire with armies. I will build one with purpose, but not all is peace in Pella. You hear shouting one night Philip's voice, booming from the inner courtyard, rage igniting against stone walls. The king is drunk again. A diplomat has insulted his new bride. The queen, Olympias, Alexander's mother, retreats to her chambers, eyes cold with contempt. The palace holds its breath. You and Alexander walk the upper corridors in silence. He says, They all think I'm just my father's son. He turns to you, suddenly fierce, but I am my mother's flame. You remember. Then, Olympias is no docile queen. She worships strange gods. Snakes curl in her chambers, and priests claim she dreams in riddles. She once told Alexander, Your father gave you a kingdom. I gave you your destiny. Now, under Aristotle's teaching, that destiny is taking shape. It is no longer just to rule Macedonia. It is to reshape the world. Asterisk. On your final day of studies, Aristotle gathers the boys in the temple grove. The wind is warm. Cypress trees whisper above you. I have taught you everything I know, he says, but that is not enough. You frown. Alexander tilts his head. Aristotle continues. Knowledge is a torch, but what you choose to burn with it is the test. He turns to Alexander. You will go far. But remember, no empire is worth a corrupted soul. Alexander nods, but does not promise that night. Beneath a purple sky streaked with stars, you find Alexander at the edge of the palace roof, staring toward the east. He does not turn when you arrive. Do you believe in fate? He asks. You hesitate. I don't know. I do, he says. But I also believe fate can be hunted, tracked, forced to show itself. He turns to you, eyes bright. One day, they'll write stories about me. He's right. But none of them will sound like this, because you are not reading about him. You are there, and he is only just beginning. You wake to panic in the courtyard. Men shout. Hooves scrape marble. Something crashes, loud and sudden. A boy screams. A spear clatters to the ground. You sprint from your quarters. Sandals half fastened, heart pounding. Guards rush past you. Spears raised, but not toward an enemy. Toward a horse. It is the largest horse you have ever seen. Jet black, muscles rippling beneath. Its hide, eyes rolling white with fury. It rears up, kicks, and throws a man against a column. The stallion's breath steams in the morning air like smoke from a battlefield. The crowd of courtiers and servants pulls back in fear. Even the warriors keep their distance. But not Alexander. He watches from the edge of the crowd, arms crossed. Lips tight, he is 15 now, taller, leaner, but still without armor or title. The horse screams again and throws another would-be handler to the dirt. The stable master turns to King Philip, bowing deeply. "My lord?" "He's unrideable. We should put him down." Philip frowns. "I paid a fortune for that beast." A murmur ripples through the court. Some nod. A few glance toward the stables. Alexander steps forward. "He's not unrideable," he says, the stable master. Turns startled. "You've seen him for 5 minutes." Alexander doesn't look at the man. He looks only at the horse. He's not wild. He's terrified. You remember the silence that fell then. Not because of the words, but the tone. It wasn't arrogance. It was diagnosis. Alexander walks slowly toward the stallion. Not straight on, but at an angle, wide, careful. He studies the horse's eyes, the nostrils, the way it backs from its own shadow. "I see it now," he mutters. He's afraid of what he can't see, of what follows him. You realize what he means a heartbeat before he says it. The horse is spooked by its own shadow. Alexander calls out, "Turn him toward the sun." No one moves. He shouts again, firmer, "Turn him." You and another page rush forward. Together, you guide the snorting, stamping creature to face east toward the morning sun. The shadows vanish, and the horse quiets. Alexander approaches again. Slowly, hands open, no rope, no whip, he whispers to the beast. Words you cannot hear. His hands stroke the neck, the flank. One step at a time, he reaches the reins. He mounts, no saddle, just skin and muscle and instinct. For a moment, nothing happens. Then the horse bolts, but Alexander stays with him. They race across the open fields black, lightning against gold grass, until horse and rider vanish beyond the hills. No one breathes. Minutes pass, then more. Attention in the court thickens, until King Philip steps forward and murmurs, "Send riders." But before the order can leave his lips, you see them. Alexander returns, not dragging the horse. Riding it, he doesn't gallop this time. He walks the horse calmly through the courtyard, past astonished soldiers, past wide-eyed nobles. The stallion obeys him like a trained dog. As he dismounts, dust clinging to his legs, sweat on his brow, Philip rushes to him. The king, this conqueror of cities, this scarred and iron-boned warlord takes his son's head in both hands and whispers, "My boy, find yourself a kingdom large enough to match your heart. Macedonia is too small." That night, a feast is held in the palace courtyard. Roasted lamb turns on spits, wine flows freely, and musicians fill the air with lyre and drum. But Alexander doesn't join the celebration. You find him in the stables, sitting beside the black stallion. He has named him Bucephalus Oxhead for his stubbornness. You sit beside him. He wasn't afraid of people, Alexander says softly. He was afraid of himself. You ask, "Do you think you'll ever be afraid?" He doesn't answer for a long time then. Only of living a life too small. Bucephalus becomes his shadow after that. Not just a horse, but a companion, a symbol. Wherever Alexander goes, the stallion follows. In the training yard, in the hills, in secret gallops beneath starlight, the horse trusts no one but him. And in time, you see why. They are the same, both restless, both wild, both born for something more than these palace walls. A few weeks later, the court hosts an envoy from Athens, a silver-tongued statesman with a polished beard and an arrogant gait. He's come to speak of alliances, tribute, trade routes. But all anyone remembers is the boy in the courtyard. The Athenian watches Alexander spar with another page. The match ends quickly. A single blow. Alexander doesn't gloat. He simply nods and walks away. The envoy turns to Philip. "Your son is impressive," he says, "but perhaps he reads too many books for a warrior." Philip laughs. "You see Alexander." Stop mid-step, he turns, walks straight up to the envoy, and says, "Perhaps your warriors bleed too easily to read." A hush, then laughter. Philip roars with pride, but Alexander doesn't smile later. You ask him if he meant to insult the man. "No," he says, "I meant to remind him. My mind is sharper than any sword, and I will use both." The next morning, he rides Bucephalus through the hills at sunrise. You follow on foot, breathless, trying to keep up. From the ridge, he looks out across the land valleys, villages, distant seas. "I want to see everything," he says. "The world?" You ask. "No," he replies. "Beyond the world," he turns to you. "I was born to break the edge of the map." And as the wind lifts his hair, and the black stallion stamps the dirt beneath him, you believe him, because you feel it too. The edge is near, and he is already crossing it. You wake to the sting of cold water, not a bath, not a drizzle, a bucket thrown directly in your face by a laughing boy who smells of sweat and leather. "Get up, soldier," he says, "even though none of you are soldiers yet. We march at dawn." You sit up groaning, soaked and sore. Around you, the other pages are already strapping on greaves, tightening sandals, and grinning with the reckless. Joy of youth spent at the edge of pain. Outside, trumpets blare, somewhere in the stables. Bucephalus whinnies, impatient to run. This is not the palace anymore. You are in the training camp, now miles from Pella, tucked between the ridges of northern Macedonia. A hard place, no servants, no soft beds, just flint and bruises, and the young. Daily reminder that sons of kings must learn to bleed like sons of shepherds. And Alexander? He's already up, already armored, already waiting. The instructor is a veteran's guard, half blind in one eye, with a voice like gravel and zero tolerance for arrogance. You think birth gives you greatness? He barks at the group of boys. The gods laugh at such lies. He slams the butt of his spear into the dirt. Here, you'll earn your bones. And so you begin, 6 hours a day. Drills until your shoulders seize. Sprints through thorny woods with no water. Archery from horseback, wrestling in mud. Night watches with no sleep. Swordplay blindfolded. Shield so heavy your arms tremble by dusk. Boys cry, some break, a few leave in the dark, silently escorted home. Their names never spoken again. But Alexander does not break. He thrives. He pushes harder, runs longer, spars more viciously than anyone. Not because he's better, but because he's watching, studying every weakness, every hesitation, every misstep, as if the battlefield is already taking shape in his mind. You realize something terrifying. This is not play for him. It's rehearsal. And then there are the companions, boys who will one day ride at his side across the known world. You learn their names now, whispered like prophecy. Hephaestion, tall, quiet, thoughtful, the only one who can match Alexander in speed or silence. They speak without speaking, sleep back to back, bleed for each other without question. Ptolemy, clever, calculating, already drawing battle maps in the dirt, while others throw rocks. Perdiccas, Seleucus, Lysimachus, boys who compete, argue, laugh. But who would kill or die for the one who stands at their center? You're part of this circle now, barely, not by blood, not by command, but by grit. You endure. You don't quit. And so you earn your place among them, not as equal, but as witness. One night, during a storm, a tree is struck by lightning just outside the camp. It burns silently, smoke rising through the black sky like incense. To some forgotten god, the boys gather around it, soaked and awestruck. Someone jokes about omens. Someone else quotes Homer. Alexander says nothing until he does. The gods strike trees, he murmurs. Men strike history. No one replies because they all understand. The gods may shape the world, but Alexander means to reshape it. Weeks pass, seasons turn, your body becomes harder, your thoughts sharper one. Afternoon, during sparring drills, Alexander is paired against a boy twice his size. A noble's son, arrogant, brutal, he fights to humiliate. He charges, Alexander ducks, and breaks the boy's nose with a single strike. Blood flies, the crowd erupts. Boy staggers, enraged, swinging wildly. Alexander doesn't step back. He steps forward and drops him. When the boy's father complains to King Philip, the king merely shrugs. He should have learned to fight better. Later that night, as you clean weapons by torchlight, Hephaestion sits beside you. He says, "You know what Alexander fears most?" You shake your head. He leans in, obscurity. You look across the camp and see him sitting alone, sharpening a blade by the fire. His face is calm, but his eyes burn. He doesn't want to be liked. He doesn't want to be loved. He wants to be remembered. The next morning, word spreads through the camp. The king has summoned the boys back to Pella. The war drums are sounding again. Philip is unifying the Greek city-states, preparing for something greater, something eastward. The Persian Empire looms like a mountain on the horizon. But before that, before campaigns and kingdoms and coronations, Philip holds one final tournament. A test, not of strength, of loyalty. Each companion must fight blindfolded one by one. Against each other, you draw lots, and when your turn comes, your heart sinks, you face Alexander. They tie the cloth over your eyes. You step into the circle, silence. Then the scrape of his foot. You move left. Faint, right? He isn't there. Suddenly, a foot sweeps your leg. You fall. The wind leaves your chest. He pins you not with force, but precision. You gasp. He says nothing. But when the cloth is lifted, he helps you up, grips your hand. You nod, you lost, but you've never felt more proud. Because in that moment, you understood. He doesn't fight to win. He fights to learn. And one day, it will make him unstoppable. That night, the stars hang heavy over camp. Alexander stands with Hephaestion, pointing east, toward lands not yet conquered, toward a history not yet written. He says, "The world is out there." He turns to the others. "But we will be in here." He touches his chest forever. And in that moment, you realize what binds this band of boys is not blood, not duty, not even loyalty. It is vision, Alexander's vision. And one by one, you feel it take root in you too. The hunger, the fire, the unbearable. Need to go further. And suddenly, Macedonia feels small like a cradle. And you? You're already dreaming of the day you wake, not as a boy in training, but as a soldier on the edge of empire. You wake to horns, not the bright trumpets of parades, not the rousing calls of morning drills. These are low, slow, ominous, funeral. Horns, you rise from your mat with a tight chest. Something in the palace feels wrong, its stones colder, its torches dimmer. The servants won't meet your eyes. The courtiers move like ghosts. And in the central hall, the throne of Philip II, King of Macedonia, unifier of the Greek city-states, master of the phalanx, is empty. He is dead. The news arrives in fragments. A dagger, a body in the theater, a former guard, a personal betrayal. There was to be a wedding that day. Philip's 7th daughters were to be married off, nobles honored, and instead, blood on marble, a shout, a scream. The king pierced through the ribs. Some say it was revenge. Others whisper of politics. But in every shadow, one question ripples. Was Alexander involved? You were there, not beside the king, not in the theater, but near enough to hear the crowd erupt, near enough to see the crimson pool soak into the earth, and near enough to see Alexander, stone-faced, not running, not trembling, listening. He says nothing at first, only watches. His hand rests calmly on the hilt of his sword, and then, with quiet certainty, He walks into the heart of the palace and begins issuing orders. The mourning rites last for days. Philip is burned in a golden coffin, buried beside the kings of old. Trumpets cry over the hills. Mourning songs echo across the Aegean. But Alexander does not weep, not in public, perhaps not at all. He dresses in full military armor. He rides Bucephalus through the gates. He stands before the army and says, "The king is dead." A hush then. Now you have a new one. Some cheer, some hesitate. He is 20 years old. What follows is not a coronation. It is a purge. Alexander moves fast. Faster than any noble expects. Rivals vanish. Generals are replaced. The old guard is reshuffled. Those loyal to Philip, but doubtful of the son, disappear. Even Attalus, Philip's top commander and uncle to the king's final bride, is accused of treason and put to death. You see it in Alexander's eyes now. This is not a boy scrambling to protect his inheritance. This is a lion reclaiming his pride, and yet, beneath the fire, there is a wound. You catch him late one night. Alone in the garden where Aristotle once taught, he says softly, without looking at you, "My father built the world I was meant to conquer." He exhales. "Now I must build my own." You ask him if he mourns Philip. He turns to you. "No." Then a pause. "Yes, but not the man." He gazes east. "I mourn the shadow he left, because that shadow is vast." Philip was not just a warrior. He was a strategist, a builder, a reformer. He transformed Macedonia from a cluster of feuding tribes into a disciplined war machine. He invented the sarissa, the 18-foot spear that changed warfare. He tamed Thessaly, humbled Athens, terrified Sparta, and now all of that belongs to Alexander. If he is ready, the nobles test him. Some quietly rebel. In Thebes, the rumor spreads. The boy cannot hold the throne. In Athens, philosophers scoff. A student of Aristotle is no king. The barbarians of Thrace stir. The Illyrians sharpen their blades. Alexander's answer? War. In a single year, he crushes the Illyrians, storms Thrace, and forces the Greek city-states back into submission. He rides harder than his generals, fights on the front lines, takes a spear through his shoulder, and keeps fighting. The army whispers stories. How he marched through blizzards without a cloak. How he leapt a chasm on horseback to flank a rebel warband. How he personally killed the man who called him Philip's shadow. Each tale grows. Some may be false, but the belief? Very real. You ride with him now, not as a page, but as a soldier. You stand beside him as he inspects the ranks of the companion cavalry. Eyes sharp, words few. He rides past you and stops, meets your eyes, nods, "Still here," he says, and something in you straightens. Something roots itself, not in loyalty, but in destiny. One night, as the army camps in the hills near Thessaly, you see Alexander seated by the fire, scroll in hand. The flames dance across his face. He's reading Homer again. The Iliad, the tale of Achilles. You approach. He doesn't look up. "He died young," he murmurs. "Achilles?" "Yes." You hesitate. "Do you want to be him?" He smiles. "I already am." Then slowly, he rolls the scroll and sets it down. "But I will live longer than him." You frown. "You mean, live longer than his years?" He turns to you. Know his name. By spring, the rebellions are crushed. The Greek cities bow again. Macedonia is firm. And now, Alexander sets his eyes east, to Persia, to an empire 10 times the size of his own, to the greatest power the world has ever known. Most men would hesitate. He gathers his generals, says 3 words. "We begin now." You feel it in your bones. The orders go out. As the ships are readied, as the troops assemble, as the sun rises red over the Aegean Sea. This is not a campaign. It is a storm. And Alexander is not walking in his father's shadow. He is casting one of his own. You wake to wind, Sharp, salty wind that smells of sea and war. You are not in Pella anymore. You are not among the hills or vineyards or dust-blown training camps. You are standing on the deck of a ship, one of hundreds. As the coast of Asia Minor rises out of the mist, Alexander stands beside you, his cloak snapping like a banner. He says nothing he doesn't need to. You are watching a dream come true, not yours, but his. And in this moment, they feel the same. Behind you, 30,000 infantry, 5,000 cavalry, engineers, scribes, cooks, doctors, architects, and adventurers, all of Macedonia and half of Greece. Before you, the Persian Empire ancient, mighty, arrogant, stretched from the Aegean Sea to the edge of India, a world of wealth, cities, and armies, far beyond your imagination. Alexander's plan? To take it, all of it. The first step is symbolic. You watch as he leaps from the ship into shallow surf. Water splashes around his bronze greaves. He doesn't hesitate. He kneels, scoops up a handful of sand, and holds it aloft. And he whispers, "I claim you." Asia. No cheers, no trumpets, just a moment burned into time. The invasion begins with the Battle of the Granicus. A river. A mistake. The Persian satraps believe the river will stop him, that cavalry cannot cross under fire, that the young king will hesitate. They don't know Alexander. You are there. At his side, the orders are fast, precise. The army forms up, silver shields gleaming under the sun, companion cavalry on the right, infantry center, archers at the flanks, and then he rides straight into the river. The Persians laugh. Then he begins to climb the opposite bank under a hail of arrows. The laughter dies, steel meets steel. Chaos erupts. You fight beside him, mud up to your knees, spears flashing, horses screaming. A Persian noble nearly cuts him down. His sword grazes Alexander's helmet, splits it open. Blood runs down the king's face. He grins and kills the man. Hours later, the river runs red. The Persian force is broken. Alexander stands on the far bank, sword raised. He has stepped into Asia, and Asia has noticed. Victories come quickly after that. Sardis, Halicarnassus. The coast falls like dominoes. But conquest is not enough for Alexander. He wants loyalty, so he doesn't burn cities. He rebuilds them. He doesn't enslave survivors. He recruits them. Everywhere he goes, he leaves governors, garrisons, schools, and altars. He brings not just war, but order. One night, in a newly conquered town, you find him in the market square. Studying the stars, he says, "Every city I take becomes part of me." You ask, what happens when you've taken them all? He doesn't blink. "I'll make a new world." But there is something else now. A whisper growing louder. Darius, King of Kings, Lord of the Persian Empire, richer than Croesus, backed by 1,000,000 men. You hear the stories. He is assembling an army. He has war elephants. He controls the Silk Road, the heart of Asia. He will not run like the satraps. He will fight. Alexander doesn't flinch. He accelerates. His army moves faster than any force in history. They cover ground in days others take weeks to cross. They live off the land, rebuild roads, cross rivers with makeshift bridges. Speed becomes a weapon. And all the while, more Greeks join him. More Persians surrender. Even some satraps defect, because they see what you see now. This is not a man. It is momentum made flesh. But not all is forward motion. There are cracks. Rumors of Philip's assassins resurface. Rivalries among the companions grow. Some Macedonian nobles whisper that Alexander has become too Eastern, too fond of Persian customs, too interested in priests and foreign gods. He spends long hours studying Babylonian texts, Zoroastrian flames, Egyptian pyramids. He tells you one night, "I was born of Macedonia, but I belong to the world." And then comes the great march inland toward the city of Gordian. There lies a knot tangled, ancient, unsolvable. It is said that whoever unties it shall rule all of Asia. You are there when Alexander walks into the temple and stares at it. Ropes as thick as a man's arm, twisted for centuries, no start. No end, he tries, he fails, the crowd waits, he draws his sword and slices it in half, silence, then cheers, and a single word carved into legend. Gordian. Back in camp, you sit by the fire with Hephaestion. He tosses a stone into the flames. He doesn't believe in limits, he says. You ask, what if something can't be solved? He shrugs. He'll remake it until it can be. By the time you reach Issus, Alexander's army is lean, blooded, and worshipful. And Darius? He has arrived, with an army so vast it stretches to the horizon. Chariots, elephants, tens of thousands. Macedonians are outnumbered 5-1. You prepare for death. Alexander prepares for victory. He rides down the lines, cloak billowing, calling his men by name. He doesn't speak of gods. He speaks of honor, of brotherhood, of history. You feel. Your blood heat. When the sun rises, you charge. The Battle of Issus is chaos. You see Alexander lead the charge himself, breaking through enemy lines, hunting for Darius. You watch him drive straight into the center, shatter the royal guard, and nearly kill the great king with his own hand. But Darius flees, again, and Alexander? He does not chase, not yet. He finds the royal tent, the gold, the wives, the silks, and he leaves them untouched because he knows. A king must be just, not just victorious, at night. As the wounded are carried away, as fires burn on the hills, as stars return to a smoke-streaked sky, Alexander calls for you. He stands alone on the ridge, looking east, always east. He says, I was my father's heir. I was Aristotle's pupil. But now, he turns to you. I am the storm itself. You wake before dawn, armor cold. Against your skin, heart thudding louder than the drums. Today is not training. Today is not conquest by surrender. Today is war. The real kind. The kind with no second chances. The kind with names carved into history. You stand among 40,000 men, all facing the same thing. A river, and beyond that river, the Persians lined on the far bank. Shoulder to shoulder noble cavalry in shining mail. Archers at the ready, banners flapping like the wings of vultures, horses stamp, sabers gleam. Their numbers are vast. Their confidence absolute, the generals. Murmur, too dangerous. Wait till morning. They have the high ground. You glance at Alexander. He is already in the saddle. Bucephalus snorts beneath him, agitated by the scent of death. Alexander looks across the water and simply says, we cross now. You are one of the first to follow. Cold water claws at your legs. The current is strong, threatening to sweep you. Downriver, arrows whistle overhead. Horses thrash beside you. One man is pulled under his spear, lost to the depths. The river feels like a trap, and maybe it is. But Alexander is ahead, already climbing the bank. Already cutting down the first line of Persian riders. His blade flashes like lightning. His shield is spattered red. He is shouting not in fear, but in challenge. And suddenly, the trap doesn't matter, because the trap is afraid of him. The battle surges like a tide. Phalanxes press up the banks. Cavalry breaks through the flanks. You see Alexander surrounded at one point, half a dozen Persian nobles closing in. Blades raised, you scream for him. He doesn't hear, he ducks, he strikes. He kills, then it happens. A Persian noble Rosses rides straight at him, shouting curses in 3 languages. The man's blade slashes downward and splits Alexander's. Helmet open, blood bursts from his brow. His head jerks back. You feel your breath stop. But before the Persian can strike again, Alexander lunges forward, sword reversed, and drives the blade into the man's chest. He doesn't fall. He collapses like a tower. Alexander wrenches the blade free. Panting, blood mixing with sweat, and the army roars. You reach the top of the riverbank. Bodies everywhere. The air reeks of iron and smoke. Persian lines are breaking. Some flee, some fight to the death. The sun rises red over the field, bathing the dead in gold. You find Alexander standing at the summit, helmet cracked, armor dented, face painted with war. He turns to you, grins. Not bad for a warm-up. Later, as the wounded are tended and the Persians retreat inland, the Macedonians gather around there. King, they expect rest. He gives them words. There will be more rivers. He points east. More walls, more kings, more storms. He pauses. But this one? He nods to the Granicus. This was the first and the last time anyone doubts us. You sit that night beside the dying embers of a campfire. Across the river, vultures circle. You can still hear the river's current in your ears. The clash of blades in your bones. It wasn't just a battle. It was a signal. To the Persians, to the world, to history itself. Alexander is here, and he is just getting started. You wake to the sea. Salt clings to your lips. The cries of gulls echo above, circling the blue-green coast like omens. Ships rock gently in the harbor. Behind you, the Macedonian camp bustles with laborers, engineers, and soldiers stacking timber under the scorching sun. Before you rises the island city of Tyre. White walls, blue banners, unbroken. It floats just off the coast like a crown on the water. A city that has defied every conqueror before. And now it stands between Alexander and Egypt. He surveys it from the beach, arms crossed, jaw tight. Tyre is well guarded. The Persians have fortified its harbors. Its navy is vast. Its walls rise sheer from the sea itself 30 meters high in places. No road connects it to the mainland. No bridge, no gates to storm. It's untouchable, but Alexander, he doesn't believe in untouchable. He turns to you and simply says, "We'll build the earth to reach it." And so it begins, not a siege, a miracle. Thousands of men are summoned. Trees fall, stone is quarried. The water between the coast and the island begins to disappear, not by flood, but by force. A causeway, a land bridge stretching into the sea, one boulder at a time. At first, it seems impossible. The water is deep. The current is strong. The Tyrians hurl insults and arrows from their walls. They mock. They laugh. But the causeway grows every day. You carry rocks, stack timber, hold your shield high as Tyrian missiles rain down, arrows, fire, boiling sand. It doesn't stop the work, because Alexander will not stop. Then the Tyrians strike. They sail out in the night with fire ships' vessels soaked in pitch, lit aflame, and hurled at the causeway. The smoke wakes you. You rush out and see it. The bridge ablaze, men screaming, fire dancing over black waves. The Tyrians cheer from their walls. You think it's over. But Alexander appears in the smoke, shouting orders, organizing the men, forming lines to extinguish the blaze. His voice cuts through the chaos like a whip. Rebuild it wider, stronger, higher. And you do, week after week, the causeway. Inches forward, you're sleeping 2 hours a night. Your hands bleed from hauling stone. Men collapse from heat stroke. The Tyrians grow bolder. They taunt. They kill. They hang Macedonian prisoners from their walls for all to see. But the bridge grows, and so does Alexander's fury. He orders ships dragged across land, war towers constructed, ballistae mounted. You watch as catapults hurl stones the size of oxen into Tyre's outer walls. And still, the city holds. Then the navy arrives, Greek allies, Phoenician turncoats, a fleet. Cobbled together from every conquered city, flies Alexander's banner now. The sea belongs to him at last. He stands on the prow of the lead ship, arms raised to the sun. Nowhere to run now. The final assault is thunder. Siege towers roll. To the edge of the causeway, Flaming arrows sail through the air like falling stars. The ships crash against the harbor walls. You're among the first to climb the ladders. The Tyrians fight like demons' daggers in both hands, shrieking, defending every inch. But your rage is greater. You think of the men who burned, the friends who died, the ones who still hang, broken from the towers. You reach the top of the wall. You raise your sword, and you bring Tyre down 7 months. That's how long it took. 7 months for a man to drag the earth into the sea. When the gates finally fall, and the Macedonian army pours into the city, Alexander does not celebrate. He walks the ruined streets in silence. Smoke clings to him like a shroud. When he reaches the palace, he turns to his generals and says, "Let the world know what happens to those who think themselves untouchable." You stand beside him on the battlements. Below, the survivors are chained, some spared, some doomed. The priests beg, the women weep. Alexander says nothing. He is not angry anymore. He is done. You ask him why he didn't give up. He looks at you. His voice is quiet. But then the sea would have won. That night, as the city smolders and the stars peer once more above the Mediterranean, you understand something. This was not about strategy. It was not about revenge. It was about will. Alexander did not break Tyre's walls. He broke the limit of what a man could do. And now, there is no going back. Not for him, not for you, not for the world. You wake to silence. Not peace, not calm, anticipation. Tens of thousands of men surround you, sleeping in rows across the earth like ripples of steel. Horses shift, fires flicker low. Armor clinks in the darkness. And somewhere out there, beyond the plain of Gaugamela, awaits the largest army the world has ever seen. The Persian Empire has come in full. Not fragments, not satraps. Darius himself is here. He brings everything. 250,000 men, scythed chariots, elephants, archers and cavalry stretching across the horizon. He has cleared the battlefield, flattened it, made it perfect for maneuvering. A death stage. His nobles wear gold-threaded robes. His camp glows with torches like a city of stars. And he waits for you. Alexander rises just before dawn, already armored, already focused. He eats with the soldiers, nothing grand, just olives, bread, water. His eyes are calm, cold, alive. You walk with him as he inspects the lines, tens of thousands of men from Macedonia, Thessaly, Thrace, Asia Minor, veterans from Isis, survivors of Tyre, brothers of war. He stops before the companions, speaks simply. Darius stands between us and destiny. He pauses, break him. And so you ride. The sun rises over Gaugamela, pale and merciless. Dust curls at your heels. You stand at the right flank beside Alexander, Hephaestion beside him. The companions ready. No drums, no screams, just breathing across the field. The Persians wait, endless, impossibly vast. There, scythed chariots shimmer in the heat. The elephants shift and trumpet. Darius watches from a golden chariot under a purple banner. You've never seen a force so large, but Alexander smiles, because he sees something else. Openings. He begins with a feint. The right flank, your flank, pushes forward. As if retreating, the Persians bite. They send cavalry to chase. It's a trap. He turns, strikes. The companions drive into the exposed. Wing like a knife into a ribcage. The phalanx holds the center. Arrows fly. Dust blinds. The sun turns red. And then you see him, Alexander, charging straight for Darius. It's chaos. Chariots thunder past you. Blades spinning on their wheels, cutting down men. But the lines hold, the spears lower, the chariots fall. Alexander reaches the center. He cuts. Down the immortals, Darius's elite guard. You follow him. Blade drawn, he drives forward. So close now, Darius turns and flees. Again, the king of kings, the ruler of half the world, runs. You chase not just him, but the dream of ending it, of finishing the war. You gallop across the bloodied plain. But Darius disappears into the hills. When the battle ends, tens of thousands of Persians are dead. Macedonian losses are a fraction by comparison. The camp falls into stunned silence, and then cheers. Later that night, the loot is tallied. You walk past wagons of gold, silver, spices, silk, gems, and royal armor. The Persian royal tent is larger than any palace you've known. You see Alexander sitting on Darius's throne. He says nothing for a long time. Then, it's not enough. Ask, what isn't? He looks east. He's still breathing. He spares Darius's family, treats his mother, wife, and daughters with respect, gives them guards, dignity. He even writes to Darius, inviting peace. Darius replies with insults and more demands. Alexander's hands tighten. Then I will take all of Persia. And he does. Babylon falls. Susa opens its gates. Persepolis, the jeweled heart of the empire, surrenders. Everywhere he goes, people cheer. They expect vengeance. He brings order. He adopts Persian dress, honors local gods, marries cultures together. Some of his men murmur. They fear he's changing, becoming too foreign. But you see it clearly. He is becoming the world. And then comes the night of Persepolis. The city glows with torches. Drunken celebration turns to fury. A woman, a dancer, whispers in Alexander's ear. This is the palace where they plotted the fall of Greece. Earn it. Earn their memory. You watch as Alexander stares into the flame of a torch. He hesitates, then lifts it. Persepolis burns. The sky glows orange. The columns crack. Statues fall. The city weeps. And you stand beside your king as fire consumes the crown of Persia. You ask him if he regrets it. He doesn't answer, but in his eyes, something shifts. He no longer looks east. He looks inward. The heart of Persia has fallen, but Alexander? He is still climbing, still chasing something. Not gold, not land, not kings, but a shape he can't quite name, and it is dragging him deeper into the unknown. You wait to rain. Not the gentle drizzle of Macedonia. This is India. Rain that drowns the earth. Rain that churns the roads into rivers. Rain that hides the sun for days. You are deep in the east now, further than any Greek before you. The maps have turned to rumor. The stars no longer follow their old patterns. The dialects shift with every mile. You've seen beasts with trunks. People with blue-painted gods. Cities of marble and gold, guarded by jungle. Alexander doesn't slow. He wants to reach the end of the world. You march for months, across deserts that kill entire columns, through forests thick as walls. Up mountains taller than Olympus, you watch men die of heat. Others freeze in the same week, but still he pushes. On, and then you hear the name. Paris, a king, a giant, some say. He rules across the Hydaspes River. He does not surrender. He does not flee. He waits. Alexander is pleased. At last a worthy fight. You camp on the near side of the river. The Hydaspes is wide, flooded, furious. The monsoon has made it into a writhing serpent. Paris is across the water with war elephants. Dozens of them, each like a moving tower. You've never fought one. None. Of you have, and still Alexander smiles. He waits for weeks, lets Paris relax. Then in the dark of night, in thunder and storm he moves. He leads a secret column upstream, crosses the river under lightning. Elephants scream in the distance. Mud grips your legs. You slip, get up, slip again. You march beside him, drenched, eyes burning, heart hammering. You feel it. This is not just a battle. It's the edge of myth. When the sun rises, the storm breaks, you are across, and Porus sees you. The Battle of the Hydaspes begins with elephants. They charge, shaking the earth. They crush men and horses alike. You see entire phalanxes collapse beneath tusks and terror. But The Macedonians adapt. You flank them, blind them, stab beneath their bellies. It's slaughter on both sides. You fight through muck, rain, and screams. You lose track of your own hands. Your sword is no longer a weapon, it's instinct. And then you see Alexander ride toward Porus himself. Porus stands tall on a massive elephant, adorned in gold, a spear in each hand. The two kings clash like titans, steel on steel, rain on bronze. Finally, Porus is wounded. He slumps, but he does not fall. He does not beg. He kneels after the battle. Alexander summons him, asks what he wants. Porus answers, bleeding, proud, like a king. Alexander laughs. And that is how I will treat you? And he does. He gives Porus his lands back, even adds more, because Alexander understands. Victory is not dominance, it's respect, but not everyone is pleased. The men are tired. They've marched for years, fought in hundreds of battles, buried friends in dozens of strange soils. And now, Alexander wants to go further, to the Ganges, to find the ocean that ends the world. You stand with him on a hilltop. The sky is clear. The jungles stretch forever. You say, they won't follow. He says, they must. But you know the truth. Even the gods rest. That night, the officers confront him, beg him, plead. Alexander listens, silent. Then, he stands. He stares into the jungle, then turns back and whispers, then we go home. And just like that, the man who never turned back does. But the way home is worse than war. He leads the army through the Jedrosian desert. A punishment, some say. A test, others believe. The sand burns your feet. The sun peels your skin. You watch men die by the hundreds from thirst. There is no shade, no enemy, only emptiness he suffers with. You refuses water when others have none, rides at the front, lifts the fallen, curses the gods. And still he survives. At last, the sea. You see it? The real edge, foaming, infinite. He kneels, scoops it in his hands, and weeps. You ask him why. He says, there was always one more river. You wake in Babylon, not a camp, not a battlefield, but a palace so vast, it feels like the gods themselves built it. Ceilings vanish into the sky, courtyards bloom with foreign flowers, waterfalls spill from carved stone, gold glimmers from every corner. But something is wrong. You don't feel peace. You feel distance. Not between you and the palace, between you and him. Alexander doesn't smile anymore. He walks alone, eats alone, sleeps in bursts. When he speaks, it's to scribes, priests, architects. He's planning something again. Not a war, a world. He has begun wearing Persian robes, sitting on golden thrones, insisting on proskynesis, that men bow to him as they would a god. Some of the Macedonians refuse. They say, we followed a king, not a god. Alexander hears them and punishes them. The companions begin to argue. Hephaestion tries to hold the circle together, but the others, Cletus, Ptolemy, Cassander, whisper behind tent flaps. They say he's forgotten who he is, forgotten Macedon, forgotten Philip, but the truth is, he hasn't forgotten. He's just outgrown it. And then it happens. Banquet, wine, music. Laughter strained like a harp string. You're there. So is Cletus the Blacka commander. A friend. He's drunk, he's proud, and he's angry. He mocks Alexander, calls him arrogant, a traitor to his father's memory, says his victories belong to his men, not his gods. The room freezes. You see Alexander rise. His eyes aren't red with fury. They are shattered. He grabs a spear, words fly, then action. The point pierces Cletus's chest. He falls dead, silence. You rush to Alexander. He is shaking, breathless, whispers, he was my brother, then falls to the floor. He does not sleep for days. Something breaks in him after that. Not rage, not guilt, stillness. Like a mirror that won't show its reflection anymore. Hephaestion tries to bring him back. They talk at night again, walk the gardens, plan cities together, share wine under starlight, but the winds are shifting. And then Hephaestion dies. Fever, sudden, brutal. You've seen Alexander wounded, you've seen him bleed, but this? This is the first time you see him crumble. He refuses food, clothes himself in black, burns incense for days. He builds a monument taller than most temples, declares Hephaestion a divine hero, and then he returns to the fire. He builds 13 cities, all named after himself. He sends armies south, east, west into Arabia, into the sea. He redraws maps with his own hands. He marries the daughter of Darius, demands his officers marry Persian women. Not out of love, out of fusion. He wants one empire, one blood, one people, but people don't melt so easily. Can empires? They bend, then break, whispers return. Some say he's possessed, others say poisoned. You see the weight in his shoulders. He talks of stars now, of immortality, of gods he might meet face to face. Then comes the final march, back to Babylon, back to the beginning of the end. He collapses at a banquet, fever, delirium, his eyes roll, his skin burns. For 11 days he lies still, too weak to speak. The generals weep, the soldiers pray. You sit at his bedside, watching the man who broke nations struggle just to breathe. *1. Night, he grabs your wrist. His grip is faint, but real. He opens his mouth, whispers, "Who do I leave it to?" You ask him, "Your empire?" He nods. You say, "Your son?" He shakes his head, smiles, "To the strongest," and then he is gone. No trumpets, no chariot of flame, just silence, and a world that suddenly feels too small again. You stand in the palace where it began. You look east, then west. Cities await orders. Armies await command. The world holds its breath, and you? You remember something he said, "I was born to break the edge of the map," and he did, but in doing so, he broke everything else too. You wake to silence, not the silence before a battle, not the silence of awe, but the silence of absence. There is no voice calling men to formation, no map spread across the table, no Alexander standing in the 10th doorway, dreaming of the next conquest. Only the breeze through an empty pavilion, the hush of a world that lost its storm. It has been weeks since his death, and still the army does not move. They argue, scheme, mourn. No one knows who leads now. His son is unborn. His generals are many. His empire is enormous and already cracking. You watch as old friends eye each other with suspicion. Hephaestion is gone. Cletus is gone. Parmenion gone. Only ghosts remain. And you? You carry the stories, because someone must. You pass through Babylon, now quiet. You walk the halls of Persepolis, still charred from the fire he lit. You see statues raised in his likeness, temples built in his name, coins bearing his face. And yet, it is not the same, because without him, all this marble and gold feels hollow. He did not want monuments. He wanted motion. One day, you stand on the dock, watching ships bound west. You remember your first crossing, the salt wind, the boy beside you, with fire in his eyes. Now the sea is calm, but you feel none of the joy. Only a strange, slow ache when you return to Macedonia. It is smaller than you remember. The palace at Pella feels like a memory. People whisper your name. They ask for stories. You tell them some, but not all. Some memories are too sharp. Some moments too sacred, because they weren't meant for history books. They were meant for you. Years past wars rage between the successors. Alexander's empire tears itself apart, not because it was weak, but because it was too vast to be held by any one man. Except him, you grow older, wounds heal into scars. Hair fades, bones ache, but one thing never leaves you, that feeling of watching him ride ahead, of hearing him whisper, will reach the end of knowing you stood beside someone not made for the ordinary rhythm of men. One night, in old age, you walk alone beneath the stars. You look up. You wonder if he's there now still. Marching, still dreaming, still hungry for the next horizon. You close your eyes, and for just a moment, you hear hooves in the distance. You feel the thunder of the companion cavalry. You smell the dust and fire of Asia, and you hear his voice, "We are the world, or we are nothing." And then, like all great storms, he is gone, but you remain. I witness a memory, a soul marked by greatness. You wake in the same bed, but nothing feels the same. The air in Babylon is heavier now, not from heat, not from war. From stillness, Alexander is dead. His breath has stopped, but the world has not. The stars still burn above the palace. The rivers still carry trade. The markets still open. But you can't breathe. The body lies in state, wrapped in cloth, oiled with frankincense, guarded by men who once would have marched into fire for him now. They stare at each other over his corpse, like wolves circling a carcass. Ptolemy, Perdiccas, Seleucus, Antipater, Cassander, Lysimachus, they all stood beneath his banner once. Now they stand alone. You hear them whisper in corners. Who commands now? Where is the will? Who takes Babylon? Who takes Egypt? There is no heir. Not yet. Roxana is pregnant, but a child cannot hold a sword. And so they delay the burial, not for ritual, for strategy. You sit alone one night in the garden, where Hephaestion used to walk with him. The wind rustles the palms. The stars do not speak. You remember the last words he said to you, "To the strongest." You ask yourself, was that a command or a curse? Perdiccas acts first. He claims the title of regent, guardian of the unborn heir. He says the empire will hold intact, united, but he doesn't trust Ptolemy. He never did. And Ptolemy? He doesn't wait. He takes the body. One morning, you wake to shouting in the palace square. The royal coffin is gone, stolen, taken south by Ptolemy, not to bury him in Asia with the kings of Macedon, but to claim him for Egypt. To be seen beside Alexander's corpse is to inherit a piece of his divinity, and Ptolemy knows it. Perdiccas gives chase. He marched south with an army to intercept the funeral procession. He never reaches it. The Nile swallows him, ambushed, betrayed, drowned by his own ambition. And Ptolemy? He buries the king in Alexandria, not beneath a mountain, but beneath a city that bears his name, a city of marble, of scrolls of light. You never see the tomb, but you hear of it. Gold casket, glass sarcophagus, ceaseless flame, and silence. Always. Silence. Years pass. You ride no more. You walk slower now. But the weight has not lifted, because wherever you go, people still ask, where is Alexander? And you can't answer, because you still don't know. They split the empire, not in grief, in greed. Syria to Seleucus, Asia to Antigonus, Egypt to Ptolemy, Macedonia to Antipater and his son. What was once one breath, now scatters like ashes on the wind. You visit the palace once more, empty now. Vines grow where maps once hung. You stand in the war room where he planned Gaugamela. You reach for the table where he traced the shape of the world with his hand. Dust covers everything except one thing, a single small object left behind. His ring. You pick it up. It fits your finger now, but you do not feel powerful. You feel cold. Outside, the sky turns the color of wine. Somewhere in some other city, a man calls himself king, but you know the truth. There are no kings anymore, only echoes. You wake to thunder, not the kind that comes from clouds, the kind that rolls from the feet of marching men, the kind that precedes betrayal outside the palace walls. The streets of Babylon are choked with movement, not celebration, not grief, occupation. Perdiccas has returned, the regent of the unborn heir. the one Alexander appointed, if such a thing can even be said aloud without being challenged. He bears the seal, the authority, and the weight of a dying king's final whisper. To the strongest, he thinks that means him. You watch him from the marble steps. He doesn't look like Alexander. He looks like math, a man cut from angles and calculations, not fire, not vision, just stone, stacked on stone, strategy in human form. He doesn't speak often. When he does, it's with certainty. That's what makes him dangerous. And then, there's the problem no one can bury. The body, Alexander's corpse oiled, shrouded, encased in gold, is no longer in Babylon. Ptolemy has it. He stole it under the cloak of a funeral procession, veered south, and made for Egypt before anyone could stop him. Not to mourn, to claim, because whoever buries the body owns the myth. The court fractures. You see it in the eyes of every man who once rode behind Alexander. They're all watching each other now. They smile like lions and bow like slaves, but their hands twitch toward their hilts. Cassander, Lysimachus. Humans, Seleucus. None of them want to fight. Not yet. But none of them will let the world forget their name. Either. Perdiccas calls you into the war room. You're older now, quieter. They all know who you are. The last man to walk beside Alexander before the fever took him. The one who carried his messages, his memories, his pain. Perdiccas does not greet you with warmth. He says, "You were there when he died." You nod, he says. "Did he name me?" You pause, you say, "He named no one." His jaw tightens, then quietly, "He did." He believes it. That's what matters. He believes he's the keeper of the king's vision, that the empire must remain whole, that Alexander's son unknown, untested, will inherit everything. So Perdiccas names himself guardian. He rules in the child's name, and in doing so, challenges everyone else. You travel with him in the weeks that follow, watching, listening. He sends envoys, draws maps, assigns satrapies. He builds a paper empire on parchment scrolls and fragile promises. But paper burns, and Egypt is not on the page anymore. Ptolemy has taken the body to Memphis, and now to Alexandria. He buries Alexander not in the soil of his fathers, but in a gleaming glass sarcophagus under an eternal flame, beside canals and pyramids, a tomb more divine than mortal. The people come from across the earth to see it, to believe, to weep, and suddenly, Ptolemy is no longer just a general. He is Pharaoh. Perdiccas rages. He prepares an army. You march with him across the desert, through the Nile, toward the mouth of Egypt. You think he won't actually do it. Not over a corpse. You are wrong. The invasion is a disaster. Ptolemy outmaneuvers him at every turn. His men fight harder. The people favor him. The gods seem to favor him. Perdiccas' troops suffer in the desert. The Nile floods, supplies vanish, and one night, in a tent filled with smoke and silence, his own officers kill him. The regent is dead. Again, there is no plan. You return north, not as a commander, but as a witness. In every city, you see the same thing. Statues being torn down, Alexander's coins melted, new kings rising, old brothers dying, and through it all, the funeral never ends. Cassander strangles Roxana and Alexander's son in secret. Humans flees into the hills with a handful of loyalists. Seleucus slinks back to Babylon and begins to build something vast and quiet. Antigonus, now Monophthalmus the One-Eyed, declares war on everyone. The world has become a palace of mirrors, everyone reflecting Alexander, but none able to become him. You spend a year in a city called Nicaea. In Bactria, it's winter, quiet. You grow a beard. People call you the old shadow. Children ask, is it true? Did he ride into battle with fire in his eyes? You nod, they ask. Did he ever lose? You look away, because this is what they don't understand. Alexander's greatest defeat wasn't by sword or spear. It was what happened after One spring morning, a merchant brings a small carved bust of Alexander to your doorstep. He says he found it in a burned-out village near Tyre. You brush away the ash. The face is worn, the eyes hollow, but the jaw is still his. You hold it in your palm. And for a moment, you remember the sea, the flame, the boy who said, "I'll reach the end." You do not cry. You haven't cried since Hephaestion. But something breaks loose in your chest, because you know what's coming. Soon, Antigonus will declare himself king. Seleucus will answer. Ptolemy will seal Egypt behind marble and scrolls. Cassander will poison everything with fear. The Diadochi, Alexander's generals, his brothers in arms, will become butchers. The land will burn, and the boy who broke the edge of the world, his name will be spoken only in battle cries. One day, in a crowded city square, you see a statue raised too high. Not him, but a local king. The people bow. You don't. A guard asks your name. You say nothing, because names fade, only witnesses remain. You sit beside a river that once carried supply boats to Babylon. Children play in the shallows. A fisherman mends a net, and you wonder, was this always going to happen? Did greatness always come with a price too high? Was empire always meant to fracture? You think of Alexander again, not on a throne, not in armor, but beneath the stars, barefoot, whispering of oceans that might not exist, of maps that needed redrawing, of gods he wanted to stand beside, not worship, but equal. You whisper into the river. Your funeral never ended, and the river carries the words away. You wake to drums, not the celebratory drums of returning soldiers. These are the drums of division. The empire is no longer a body. It is a corpse, picked apart by those who once held the sword beside it. You walk among camps now, not as a warrior, not anymore, but as one who remembers, one who watches. The soldiers call you old companion. The officers treat you like a relic. But you know more than any of them, because you remember when it was whole. Now it is war. Not one war, many. Each battle not just for territory, but for legitimacy, for identity, for the right to say, I was his heir. You travel across a continent drowning in ambition. Everywhere you go, there is fire. You see Alexander's world, your world, split like glass beneath a hammer. In Asia, Antigonus. One eye claims it all, not a whisper, a roar. He marches from the mountains of Phrygia to the palaces of Susa, declaring himself the guardian of the empire's eastern spine. He does not ask permission. He takes, in Babylon, Seleucus watches from the shadows, silent, patient. His empire is not yet land, but information. His ears are everywhere. His fingers stretch further than his feet. He sees what Antigonus does not, and he waits in Egypt. Ptolemy sharpens himself into something immortal. He builds walls, libraries, tombs. He wraps himself in prophecy. He tells the priests, I do not rule in Alexander's name, I continue him, and they believe him. Because he has the body and the calm, in Macedon, Cassander tightens his grip. He declares himself king. He spreads lies about Alexander. He builds statues of himself, and he orders the deaths of all who still whisper the old name with reverence. You? Here he personally gave the command to strangle the boy Alexander's son and Roxana, and then burned their bodies in silence. You are not surprised, because Cassander always envied the light. And envy, left to rot, becomes a throne of bones. The year is 316 BCE. 10 years after Alexander's death, the world is in flames. You sit beneath a cypress tree outside Babylon and trace the names in the dirt. Antigonus, Seleucus, Cassander, Ptolemy, Lysimachus, each once a brother, each now a knife. Then comes the call to arms. Antigonus grows too strong. He declares himself king of Asia, a title not earned. Stolen Seleucus flees Babylon, joins with Ptolemy and Lysimachus. They send messages west, across the dry plains of Thrace, to Cassander. We do not stop him now. We will be his vassals by winter. For once, Cassander agrees. The Diadochi convene their armies, each field a mirror of the past. Macedonian phalanxes sharpened for brothers' blood. Elephants trained by Indian masters, now turned on former allies. Cavalry once united under Alexander's gaze, now driven by rival banners. They say the gods are confused, because no side wears the truth, only colors you don't ride with any of. Them, not anymore. But you watch. You pass through camps under false names. You hear the soldiers talk by the fires. We used to fight for a god. Now we fight for a name. Which one? A shrug, because no one remembers why. Only who the first great clash is at Gaza. Ptolemy and Seleucus versus Demetrius, son of Antigonus. The boy is young, rash, brilliant. He leads a cavalry charge that splits the enemy flank, but Seleucus strikes back with elephants and cunning. Demetrius is beaten, not crushed, but cut, and he bleeds ambition. Antigonus, enraged by his son's retreat, begins consolidating more land. He seizes Syria, marches on Asia Minor, builds a fleet, erects statues of himself in city squares. He is not content to be a general. He wants what Alexander had, not the empire, the all. Meanwhile, Seleucus returns to Babylon, and from there, he builds not fast, but relentlessly. He writes laws, founds cities, marries local women. He understands what the others do not. An empire built on conquest alone will drown in its own blood. You pass through Seleucia. It is clean, ordered, no golden. Statues, no proclamations, just grain, brick, coin, stability, and slowly, the people begin to whisper, perhaps he is the one. But then Antigonus sends Demetrius again, this time to Rhodes. The island resists, and for a year, the world watches as father and son attempt to crush it with siege towers the size of palaces. They fail, barely, but failure spreads like rot. The myth of Antigonus cracks, and the others smell blood. Then comes the year 301 BCE. You wake in Phrygia, near the town of Ipsus. You feel it before you see it, the earth shaking with the march of tens of thousands, the smell of horses, oil, sweat, rust, prayer, the final reckoning. The battle will decide everything. Seleucus and Lysimachus on one side, Antigonus and Demetrius on the other. You are there, but not in armor, not with a blade. You stand on the ridge, watching. Because you have seen too much to choose now. The fighting is cataclysmic. War elephants crash through lines like gods on legs. Spears break, men scream, dust blinds the sun. Demetrius charges, breaks the right flank, then overreaches, disappears into the storm, and that's when Seleucus strikes. With his elephants, hundreds of them, they seal the gap. Cut Antigonus off from his son. Surround him, you see it happen. Antigonus stands alone on a small hill. Bloodied, breathing like a bull, he raises his sword, and a dozen javelins fall. He dies on his feet. The victors roar. Lysimachus takes Western Asia. Seleucus claims the East. Cassander tightens his grip on Macedonia. And Demetrius? He escapes, somehow, somewhere, and the game continues. But something has changed, because at Ipsus, the empire of Alexander died again. Not with betrayal, not with sickness, but with forgetting. You leave the battlefield that night, ash in your nose, blood on your sandals. You walk alone toward the moonlit hills, and you whisper his name, Alexander, not as a curse, not as a prayer, but as a warning, because now only ruins remain of his cities, of his dream, of the men who once called each other brother. You wake to light, not sunlight, library light, the kind that filters through sandstone windows and settles over scrolls like dust. You are not in a tent, not in a palace, not on a battlefield. You are in Alexandria, a city Alexander never saw complete. but one he imagined and Ptolemy built. The year is 297 BCE. You are old now, not yet dying, but slower, the soldier in you has faded. The boy who rode beside the storm is a shadow in your chest. You walk through streets named after gods you never knew, past markets that sell spices, papyrus, ink, and fish, past children playing between marble columns and granite obelisks. You walk, not as a visitor, but as a relic, and in this city, the past is never buried, because Ptolemy won't let it die. He rules from the royal quarter, a maze of palaces, gardens, and shrines beside the sea. His guards wear Greek armor and speak Egyptian prayers. His banners bear the eagle of Macedon and the eye of Horus. His people call him Pharaoh, but his enemies still whisper, "Just another Diaticus." He doesn't answer them. He writes instead. You enter his court with little fanfare. He sees you, recognizes you, doesn't smile, just nods. "You've come far," he says. You nod back. Pours you wine, and silence fills the space between two men who both remember the same ghost. Alexander. His name is never far from your mind, but here, it is everywhere. In Alexandria, Alexander is not dead. He walks in marble, in bronze, in firelight. Ptolemy has made memory a kingdom, and it is more powerful than any spear. He shows you the tomb, one night, without guards, without priests, just you, him, and the silence. It is underground, beneath layers of ivory and earth. Near the heart of the city, he carries a torch. You carry your breath in your chest, like a fragile stone. You pass columns, walls inscribed in Greek and Egyptian. You reach the chamber, and there he is, Alexander, encased in crystal and gold, his skin preserved by alchemy and time, his face softer than you remember, more asleep than dead. You do not speak, you only kneel, because this is not just a body, it is a warning, a crown no one else could wear, a question no one could answer. Ptolemy stands beside you, says, "I thought if I buried him here, I could keep him." You glance at him, he's aged, but not broken, his eyes still cut. His posture still holds the lines of a man trained by conquest. He continues, "He gave us the world, but it was too heavy." You return to the palace he gives. You a room, scrolls, a window that looks out over the harbor. Ships come in every morning, bearing goods and books and ideas. And you realize this is not an empire built on conquest. It's built on remembrance. Ptolemy does not speak often of war anymore. But you see the scars, the way he moves his shoulder, the way he drinks his wine, the way he hesitates when saying Hephaestion's name. He's still haunted, just quieter, like the sea beneath a lull. You ask him one night why he writes. He points to a scroll, yellowed, frayed. "The story must be told," he says. You ask, "Yours?" He shakes his head. His. He's writing a history of Alexander. Not the man you knew, not entirely. A cleaner version. A version the world can love. A version that can last. You stay for weeks, then months. You walk the halls of the library. You see engineers charting the stars. Doctors dissecting fish beside philosophers debating virtue. You see children being taught in 3 languages. You see ideas being traded like spices. And in all of it you feel him, Alexander, still guiding, still burning, not as king, but as myth. And yet, there are cracks, because even here, in this sanctuary of scrolls and sunlight, the world creeps in, letters arrive, Cassander has died, Lysimachus rises, Seleucus grows bolder in the east. The war is not over, it never was. One afternoon, Ptolemy calls you to the harbor walls. From there, you can see the lighthouse, a tower of mirrors and flame, taller than anything in the world, he says. "Do you see it?" You nod. "It watches the sea," he says, "but it cannot see the storm." You ask him what storm. He just says, "All things break, even memory." He names his son Ptolemy Philadelphus, The dynasty begins, and you understand what he's done. He has recast power, not with conquest, with inheritance. He is no longer just one of Alexander's generals. He is a lineage, and in time, you realize something else. The greatest empire that Alexander left behind was not territory, not battles, but men like Ptolemy, who took fragments and forged something new, something that lasts. You leave Alexandria in spring. You don't say goodbye. There's no need. You've seen what you came to see. You walk through. The gates, a child runs past, holding a wooden sword, shouting, "Alexander! I'm Alexander!" You pause, you turn, you smile, because in this place, he is still alive, and as you walk along the Nile, the wind carrying dust and birdsong, you whisper one final truth to yourself. Asterisk, asterisk. Ptolemy did not bury Alexander. He made him eternal. You wake in Amphipolis. Rain taps the roof like the sound of distant drums. The sky is gray, low, almost reluctant. And the wind carries a chill that feels older than winter. You sit by the window in a rented house above the city. Below you, life goes on. Markets open, men sharpen blades, mothers call children to eat, but none of them know what you know. A king is about to die, and he is still only a boy. You haven't seen Roxana in years, not since the palace halls of Babylon, when her face was lined with grief and defiance, and her arms cradled something more fragile than empire. A child, Alexander IV, the boy the world was supposed to wait for. The boy who carried the flame. You remember the moment of his birth. It was summer. Babylon baked beneath the sun. The city stopped breathing. When the servants emerged with the news, a son. The soldiers roared. Women wept. Veterans raised cups of watered wine to the sky. You stood in the hall and whispered, "He's just a child." But behind you, someone said, "He's the future." And that's what doomed him. Because the world doesn't wait for children. Not this world. Not this empire. After Alexander died, Roxana became a pawn. She knew it. You could see it in her eyes. The same fire her husband had. But where he was free to conquer, she was forced to hide. At first, she was watched. Then she was guarded. Then she was imprisoned. Not in chains, in politics. Perdiccas tried to protect her, but he died in the Nile. Cassander promised to respect the queen, but you knew that meant control her. And now, 12 years later, the child is no longer a baby. He is a boy, and Cassander is nervous. You hear the rumors, long before they are confirmed, that Roxana has been moved to a remote villa near Amphipolis, that guards now outnumber servants, that letters are intercepted, that the boy has never been seen by the public. You travel there anyway, under another name, because someone must remember, the villa is large but lifeless. Walls high, windows shuttered. You arrive at dusk. You lie. Say you're an old friend, a poet. You expect to be turned away. Instead, a woman lets you in. An older servant. She recognizes you. Her hand trembles as she closes the door behind you. "You should not be here," she whispers. "Neither should she," you reply. You find Roxana in a garden overgrown with thorns. She wears black. Her face is thinner, sharper, not broken-honed. She looks up, her eyes widen. She says your name like a memory pulled from a grave. "I thought you were dead." "Not yet." She smiles, but only briefly inside. The boy stands beside a carved wooden horse. He's reading a scroll. Greek, his father's tongue. When he sees you, he doesn't run, doesn't speak, just watches, like Alexander used to that. Night, you sit with Roxana by the hearth. The boy sleeps in the next room. She pours wine, not much. You ask her why she hasn't fled. She says, "Where would I go? Who would take us?" You say, "Egypt. Ptolemy would protect you." She shakes her head. "No, he would use us." A pause. "So would they all." And she's right, because the boy is not just a boy. He is a crown with legs, a threat to every man who has ever dared call himself king. She tells you about the last 12 years, about silence, letters gone unread, messengers never returning, about guards with sharp eyes and dull smiles, about the time she tried to send her son to Crete, and the ship sank before it ever left harbor, about the nights when she teaches him how to die quietly. In case the time comes, you ask what she wants. She answers, for him to live, not to rule, just to live. You stay for a week. You read with the boy. He asks about his father. You tell him only what won't hurt. You see the same flickers. The hunger, the patience, the fire, but none of the tools. He's never held a sword, never raced a horse, never shouted a command over wind and chaos. They've kept him small by design, because a prince who cannot lead cannot be feared on your final night. You walk the gardens with Roxana. She speaks softly. You know what they'll do. You nod. You both know Cassander won't let this continue. The longer the boy lives, the greater the threat. He will wait until the moment is quiet, then act. Without blade or banner, you leave at dawn. You don't say goodbye to the boy. You don't look back, because you know the world won't either. 2 months later, the news reaches you in Thebes. No messenger, just a merchant at a tavern, whispering over wine. They found them dead. Roxana and the boy, poison, they say. Cassander denied it. You feel the cup slip from your hand, but you don't move, because you knew, you always knew. You walk into the hills that night, away from the city, away from the noise. You build a small fire and sit beneath the stars. You try to remember his voice, but it's too new, too faint. You remember his father's instead. The world is out there, and now it's owned by murderers. No statue will be raised for Alexander IV. No coin will bear his face. No song will speak of him. But you remember, and that's all there is left. One day, decades from now, a child will ask, did Alexander have a son? And some scholar will say, no, just a legend, and the world will move on. But you will whisper his name into the dirt. He was a boy, and they feared him anyway. You wake in Babylon again, but it's not the same Babylon. The drums are gone, the torches, the trumpet lines, a crackle of 1,000 languages in one crowded square. Now, the streets are silent, the gardens overgrown, the fountains dry. But there is a man in the shadows of this old capital, and his name is Seleucus. He was never the loudest of the companions, not like Cletus, not like Ptolemy, not like Antigonus the One-Eyed, who died shouting beneath a storm of javelins. Seleucus watches, listens, waits, and when the last blade falls, he moves. You arrive as a stranger, older than you've ever felt. You wear no colors, carry no sword, just a scroll, a cloak, and the weight of memory. They let you through the gates because no one sees you as a threat, but the guards don't miss much, and when you mention your name, they do not smile. They bow, because even now, you are one of the last living links to Alexander himself. And that still means something. You meet Seleucus in the old gardens near the Ishtar Gate. No throne. No court. He walks among broken statues with one hand behind his back. He greets you like a man greeting a stone wall. Polite, respectful, emotionless. Welcome back, he says. You nod. I heard you were in Egypt. He adds, you nod again. And that's all that's said for now. You follow him through the ruins of the palace. But it's not decay, you see. It's foundations, workers everywhere, architects arguing over slabs of limestone, soldiers unloading lumber from caravans, children sweeping dust from tile mosaics. You realize something strange. Seleucus isn't restoring glory. He's building stability. Over the next few days, you observe, he rises before dawn, reviews reports, walks every corner of the city on foot, eats with governors, speaks to priests. In the ziggurat, he's not worshipped here. but he is obeyed, and you begin to see what others missed. Seleucus doesn't want Alexander's shadow. He wants his structure. Babylon is not the only jewel in his crown. In the years since Ipsus Seleucus has claimed Mesopotamia, Persia, Media, and much of India, his empire is the largest of all the Diadochi. But you hear no boasting, because for Seleucus, size is not pride, it is problem. His lands stretch too far, from the Levantan coast to the Indus. Too many peoples too. Many gods, too many memories of other kings. You hear how he solved it. He sends governors trained in Greek and local custom. He marries Apama, a noblewoman from Sogdia. He founds cities, dozens of them, each named Seleucia, not to honor himself, but to build anchors where Alexander brought fire. Seleucus brings roots. You meet him again a week later. He's reviewing trade ledgers, silver, timber, tin from Anatolia. You ask, is this what you dreamed of when you rode with Alexander? He looks up slowly. I dreamed of surviving. A pause then. I dreamed of a world that didn't collapse. The moment he died, you ask if he misses him. Seleucus closes the scroll. No. Another pause. Then, but I remember him every day. There is a story the soldiers whisper, that Seleucus, upon retaking Babylon, visited the temple of Marduk and wept when he saw the statue still intact. They say he gave offerings not as a conqueror, but as a guest. They say he stayed in silence for hours. When you ask him about it, he waves it off. They're old gods, he says, but you hear the reverence under the deflection. He still carries the past, but unlike the others, he's not trying to rewrite it, just survive it. That winter, you travel with him east, to Seleucia on the Tigris, a city, rising from the riverbanks like a promise. It is not magnificent yet, but it is functional, warehouses, schools, a theater half finished, an observatory being designed by Babylonian mathematicians and Greek philosophers. Seleucus walks its streets as if he's counting every stone. He tells you, this will outlive me. And maybe he's right, because unlike Antigonus and Demetrius, he's not looking for immortality. He's looking for order, but order is never permanent. In the spring, word comes from the west. Demetrius, son of Antigonus, is on the move again. He calls himself King of Macedonia. Cassander is dead, throne is open, and Demetrius means to take it. Seleucus listens, says nothing, then nods to his generals, prepares for war. You feel the wind shift. Even here in this stable empire of scrolls and silos, the old hunger returns, because no man who followed Alexander can ever sit still for long. One night, you sit beneath the stars with Seleucus. He watches the constellations. You ask him why he hasn't crowned himself Alexander's true heir. He chuckles, not loudly, just enough, because I know what that crown costs. You nod. He adds, and I know what it's worth now. You part ways the next day. He rides north. You stay behind, in a city that hums with work and quiet ambition. You realize something strange. Seleucus never became a legend, but perhaps that's what made him so dangerous and so necessary, because while the others chased glory and blood, he built something that could endure. And centuries from now, long after the statues crumble and the thrones are forgotten, children will still walk the streets of Seleucia. They won't know his face, but they'll live in his world. You wake to the sound of elephants. Their feet strike the ground like war drums. Their breath clouds the air, steaming in the early morning sun. Around you, tens of thousands of soldiers are sharpening spears, fixing armor, tightening straps over worn shoulders. Today, they do not fight Persians. They do not face foreign kings. Today, they fight each other. The battlefield is called Ipsus, a flat plain in Phrygia, scorched and dry, caught between the fading spine of the mountains and the long shadows of dying empires. This is where the story ends. Not Alexander's, theirs. You are older now, too old for marching, too old for shouting, but you're here, because this is the last place his name will still matter. You wear no banner, carry no blade, you walk the line. As a ghost might remembering every face that once stood tall under a single sun, now they bring storms against each other. On one side, Antigonus One-Eye, the last of the elder generals, his son Demetrius, now called the Besieger, they hold. The West, the heart of Asia Minor. Antigonus believes this battle will restore unity. He's wrong. On the other, Lysimachus, cold and calculating, who took Thrace and now wants the rest. Seleucus, calm and relentless, who brings war elephants and empire in his shadow. And the ghost of Cassander, who died before this day, but whose lies and murders helped light the fuse. Together, they have agreed on one truth. Antigonus must fall. You remember the first time you saw him, Antigonus. He was a wall of a man, missing one eye, always growling, always laughing louder than anyone else. He protected the young Alexander like a lion protects a cub. Now, he sharpens a blade in silence, because his son rides beside him, and he knows that. If they lose today, Demetrius dies too. The air before battle is heavy. The men do not chant. They do not cheer, because this is not a war of conquest. It is a war of inheritance, and no one wins that cleanly. You stand near a ridgeline with some old Thracians. No one recognizes you now. Good. You want to watch this like a historian, but your hands still twitch. Because you know what's coming. The signal is given. The trumpets cry, and hell follows. The phalanxes move first, thousands of spears, rippling like silver fields in motion. Then the cavalry charges, then the elephants. So many elephants, Seleucus has brought hundreds from the eastern provinces. They move like gods made of thunder and bone. Antigonus watches them come and whispers to his son, "They are beautiful. You cannot see the center from where you stand. Too much dust, too many screams." But word travels fast on a battlefield, and what you hear is this: Demetrius breaks the enemy left flank. But in doing so, he rides too far. The breach is real, but now he's cut off. Seleucus sees it and sends the elephants, not at Demetrius, at his father. You imagine Antigonus watching the horizon, waiting for his son to return. You imagine the first time he realizes he's not coming back. You push forward now, as far as the line will let you. You want to see it with your own eyes, because this is the moment history changes. You find higher ground, and you see him, Antigonus. He stands atop a small rise, his personal guard crushed, his banners torn. He bleeds from 3 wounds already, but he does not fall. He does not kneel. He raises his sword and waits. Seleucus sends javelins. They strike the ground near him. One finds his thigh. He stumbles, does not fall. The second catches his ribs. He snarls, and finally, a volley rains down. When the dust clears, Antigonus is dead. The men of his line scatter. Some weep, some cheer. But the sun does not stop. It simply rises and moves on. That night, you sit among the cypress trees on the edge of the battlefield. Bodies are everywhere. Flies rise like smoke. You think of names: Perdiccas, Roxana, Cassander, Hephaestion, Parmenion, Alexander the Fourth. You whisper them to the wind, because someone must. Demetrius escapes. Of course he does. You hear he flees to the Aegean, to carve out a fleet, a new war, a second life. You're not surprised, because some ghosts refuse to rest, and Seleucus, he does not gloat. He does not kneel in victory. He walks the field in silence. He finds Antigonus's body, covers it with a cloak. He orders it buried with honors. You see that, and you understand. He remembers too. Ipsus is the end of the dream. There is no more empire of Alexander, only kingdoms now. Fragments: Egypt, Syria, Macedonia, each ruled by a man who once stood under one banner. Now they build walls between their memories. And you? You leave the battlefield as quietly as you arrived. No one stops you because no one sees you anymore. You are the shadow of a time that no longer exists. You walk through the tall grass as dawn breaks. The wind whistles through the pines, and somewhere, you swear you hear it: hooves, marching feet, trumpets, and a voice, his voice. We were meant to reach the edge, but now, the edge has reached you. You wake in silence, not the heavy silence of morning, not the charged silence before a battle. This is the silence of absence, not of one man, but of a generation. You are in Delphi now. The mountains loom quiet. The winds carry the scent of pine and stone. You walk slowly through its winding paths. The old oracle temple stands, cracked and forgotten. Weeds spill between marble steps. The priestesses are long gone. No one comes here for answers anymore, because the gods like kings have stopped answering. You have outlived them all, not just Alexander, but his companions, his generals, his heirs. Perdiccas drowned. Ptolemy died of fever in Alexandria. Seleucus was assassinated by a man he trusted. Lysimachus fell in battle. Cassander died of disease. Buried beneath his lies, Demetrius vanished. Defeated, broken. Even their sons are dying now. Even their sons' sons. And through it all, the empire, that dream that spanned the world, never came back. You sit beneath an olive tree on the hillside and watch the valley below. There are cities now that wear his name, but not his soul. Alexandria, still gleaming beside the sea. Alexandropolis, quiet and shrinking. Alexandria Eschate, the furthest now ruled by men who have never heard his voice. His name remains, but his vision? Gone. In Babylon, you are told, they still whisper his name in temples. In India, the Brahmins remember a pale god who came from the west and vanished into legend. In Egypt, tourists still flock to the tomb. But no, one knows what he smelled like. No one remembers how his voice cracked when he was tired. No one remembers the boy who asked Aristotle about the stars. Only you do. You travel less now. Your bones ache, your hands tremble, but still you move, because if you stop, he disappears. You return to Macedonia once more. Pella is ruins, the palace gone, the gymnasiums filled with weeds. The courtyard where he broke Bucephalus now houses chickens. Children play war there, shouting, laughing, falling in the dirt. You sit in the doorway of a burned-out stoa and listen. To them shout his name. They say it wrong. They call him Alexandros. They say he fought dragons, that he flew on the back of a griffin, that his skin shined like bronze. You do not correct them, because even a distorted echo is still an echo. You speak sometimes to young men, soldiers, students. They ask you, did you fight with him? You nod. They ask, was he like they say? And for a long time, you never know how to answer, because what do they say now? He's a god in the East, a tyrant in Athens, a savior in Egypt, a phantom in Macedon, a ghost in you. One night, a young scribe sits beside you with ink-stained fingers and wide eyes. He says, tell me what he was like. And you pause, and you say, he never stopped. The boy asks you to explain. You say, he marched when there was nothing left to conquer. He studied when others drank. He forgave enemies who would betray him again. He charged alone when no one followed. He stared at stars longer than he stared at maps. And when he looked at the world, he didn't see what was. He saw what could be. Asterisk, asterisk. The boy doesn't speak for a long time. Then he writes it down, and you let him. You live in a small house now near the sea, not far from Thessalonica. The olive groves hum with bees. The water is cold and blue. Each morning, you walk along the beach, barefoot, your cloak loose at the shoulders. You speak his name softly. Into the wind, sometimes the wind answers. Sometimes it doesn't. One spring morning, you receive a letter, an invitation. The Library of Alexandria. They are compiling histories, legacies, They want you to come, to dictate everything, to preserve what was never written. You hold the scroll for a long time, then you burn it, not in anger, but in peace, because you've already written his story. Not with ink, but with blood, with sand underfoot, with rain in your eyes, with the ache of a horse's gait, with the taste of Persian dust, with the silence of Tyre's ashes, with the scream of Hephaestion's death. You wrote it by living it, and that is enough. One night, you wake in the dark, the sea murmurs outside, and for the first time in years, you dream you're back in the war tent. He's young again, no crown, no army, just a boy, sitting by the fire, asking you what's east of the Indus. You laugh, say you don't. No, he says, let's find out. You wake smiling. A week later, your legs give out beneath you on the road. A shepherd finds you beside the trail. You are still breathing, barely. He carries you to a nearby house, lays you in the shade. You whisper only one thing before you fade. We reached it. He asks what you mean, but you're already gone. Some say you were buried in an unmarked grave. Others say the scribe found your name and carved it into a stone near the coast. It doesn't matter, because what you carried, what you kept alive, was never yours to keep. It was his, and now it belongs to the world. Somewhere in Alexandria, a candle is lit in a temple beside a glass tomb. Somewhere in a forgotten mountain village, a soldier tells his son the story of the storm that rode on horseback. Somewhere in the east, an old coin is turned over in a trader's hand. And the face still shines, Alexander. His world is gone, but his name is still moving, still reaching, still burning. You wake in papyrus. The air is dry. The scent of ink clings to your nose, old leather, salt, dust, and something just slightly bitter. Scrolls line the walls like ribs of a long-dead beast. Scripts in Greek, Aramaic, Egyptian, Sanskrit. You are in the great library of Alexandria. You no longer exist in flesh, only in memory. They have begun to write about him. Not you, him, Alexander, at first. They sent scholars to find you. You refused. Then they sent letters. You burned them. Now they work without you, and they fill the gaps you left with guesses, with trauma, with invention. And soon, invention becomes truth. You are not angry. You are just tired, because you understand what they're doing. They are not trying to dishonor him. They are trying to possess him. A young historian reads aloud from a new scroll as you sit quietly in the corner. Alexander was born with lightning in his veins. He never slept. He spoke all languages. He tamed the horse by whispering in its ear. You don't speak, because what would be the point? They don't want the boy who bled. They want the miracle. The library is beautiful, a cathedral of silence and reverence. Shelves stretch higher than ladders. Busts of philosophers guard the doors. Torches burn in polished sconces. Young scribes rush through its halls with ink-stained hands and bright eyes. It is everything he would have loved, and nothing he would have built, because knowledge, to Alexander, was not to be stored. It was to be used, to move, to cut, to pierce the unknown. You find one scroll labeled, "The Letters of Alexander to Aristotle." You open it. It's a fabrication, beautifully written, but false. He never wrote to Aristotle. They sat beside each other in the shade. They argued, they questioned. They disagreed, but there were no letters, just voice. Now gone. In another chamber, you find a statue, a towering bronze effigy of Alexander. Not how you remember him. This Alexander has perfect symmetry, eyes that burn like suns, a body that seems both divine and impossible. He holds a sword, and in his other hand, a globe. You laugh aloud, a sharp sound in the sacred quiet. A scholar shushes you. You say nothing, because they don't know. Alexander never wanted the world as a trophy. He wanted it as a door, later, in the central archives. You sit beside a scribe. He is copying an account from Ptolemy's history. the one your old friend spent years writing before he died. The scribe looks up. You were there, weren't you? You nod. He hesitates. Was he like this? He asks, gesturing to the scroll. You ask, which version is that? A divine one. He says, you shake your head. Then you say, he was not a god. The scribe stares. You finish. He was something far rarer. He was real. But real doesn't last in Alexandria. Not here. Here, everything is edited. You find yourself returning to the statue each night, just to watch how the torches light his face. It glows like he's still alive, like he's about to speak. But he never does. And that silence? That's the truest part of the statue. They've named entire wings of the library after him. The Alexandrium, the Hall of Conquest, the Wing of Kings. You walk through them slowly, like a man walking through his own grave. You find a room where children are being taught the names of battles. Granicus, Issus, Gaugamela, Hydaspes. A young boy recites them proudly. The teacher asks, and what happened after Hydaspes? The child says, he conquered India. You stop in the doorway. The teacher nods, you speak. He turned around. They both look at you, you continue. He cried beside a river. He held his men's hands. He gave up the edge. The teacher frowns. That part was removed. He says, you nod, and walk away. One afternoon, a poet reads a new work. An epic, thousands of lines, all rhymed. He recites with flair. Born of Zeus and Olympias fair, he crossed the world on Pegasus' air. The Persians fell, the stars did bow. The heavens crowned his holy brow. When he finishes, the room erupts in applause. You are the only one who doesn't move, because in those verses he is already gone. You ask one of the older librarians why they rewrite it all. She shrugs. Because people need heroes. You ask, what? About the truth? She smiles sadly. The truth is too small for a legend. And so the truth dies. Not with fire, not with conquest, but with polish, with poetry, with silence. One night, you sneak into the stacks. You find a scroll you once helped dictate something. Humans wrote about Alexander's temper. His grief, his tears, it's faded. Ignored, uncopied. Soon it will rot. You don't save it. You let it go. Because you understand now. What lives is not what's accurate. It's what inspires still. Before you leave the city for the final time, you do one thing. You find a blank scroll. You dip the quill. And you write. He was not flawless. He made mistakes. He wept for enemies. He held dying friends. He doubted himself. He burned cities. He rebuilt them. He saw more than any man. He chased the edge of the world and found himself instead. You leave the scroll unsealed, place it at the bottom of a stack. It may be read, it may not, but it's there, waiting, because long after the library burns, long after statues crumble, long after poets change his name, again, someone will be searching, and they will want to know, who was he, really? And maybe they will find this. You wake again, but there is no tent overhead, no flickering torch, no maps waiting on a table. There is only sky, pale, wide, empty, and it feels familiar, like something you left behind, and finally found again. You are old, older than most men ever lived to be. Your hands have forgotten the weight of a sword. Your voice is soft now. Your back bends. Your breath catches when you climb hills you used to sprint. But inside, something still walks beside you. His name is never far. Not even now, Alexander. You do not say it often, not out loud, but it beats in your chest, wakes in your bones, moves through your shadow. People think memory fades, but some memories become. You live in a quiet village now. Stone house, small vineyard, a chair that creaks in the morning light. You grow herbs, tell stories to the local children, help a neighbor mend a fence at night. You sit beneath the stars and listen. And sometimes, You hear him, not his voice, not his words, but his want, that endless, impossible want, the hunger to go, to break, to discover, to become. You never truly had it, but he did, and standing beside it for all those years, changed you. One evening, a traveler arrives, a young soldier, bronze armor, Macedonian make, dust. On his boots, he asks if you're the one who rode with the king. You nod. He asks what it was like. You pour him wine, and you say, it was never just war. It was thunder. It was laughter. It was fire in the eyes of a boy who is never afraid to die. It was waking every day not knowing if you'd live, but knowing without question that what you were doing mattered. We weren't chasing gold. We weren't chasing cities. We were chasing something bigger. We didn't know what it was, but he did. The young soldier listens like a man drinking. From a spring, you see it in his eyes, the same light, and for a moment, you are no longer here. You are in India, rain soaking your tunic, blood in your teeth, and a boy beside you, screaming at the sky like it owes him answers. You blink, the vision fades, the fire crackles, the soldier is gone, but you know, he'll carry that spark, because it never dies. In your final season, you begin to dream again, not of battles, of beginnings of Pella, the sound of horses. The morning Aristotle arrived, the way Bucephalus reared under his hand, the silence, the first time he was called king. In your dreams, you see him young again, not the god they made him, not the king the world remembers, just the boy, wide-eyed, witty, impossible. And one night, you walk through the garden, the moon full, your feet unsure, you pause near a tree. You feel the breeze shift, and someone stands beside you. You do not turn. You do not speak, because you already know it is him. Not in armor, not with a crown, just barefoot, alive. Laughing softly, he says nothing. But you both look out at the stars, and for the first time in years, you feel whole. He points to the sky. You follow his finger there. Above the tree line, a star, brighter than the rest. You ask him, did we make it? He doesn't answer, but he nods, and in that nod is everything. The next morning, the sun rises red and golden. You don't wake. You are already elsewhere, gone, but not vanished, because people still speak of you in whispers. They say you are his shadow, his scribe, his sword, his soul. They argue about your name, your age. They write scrolls. They build statues. They invent stories. But the truth, the real truth, is this. You were the one who followed the fire and watched the world burn into light. Somewhere, far away, a boy reads your name. He does not know your face, but he closes the scroll and walks out into the wild to chase something bigger than himself. And in that chase, you live again.